Let's see if we can get those folks out of the break room, because we are in third reading. So let's try to get, everybody we can here on the floor. Let's get her done. Sensing your urge to vote. No. Yeah. All right. Let's see. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 107. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 107, sponsored by Senator Landon, e-cigarette and vapor material directory, an act relating to taxation and revenue, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments. The first one will be last. So the second one would be Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 107 and ask for your aye vote on this. Now, after yesterday's session, I was pretty confused at what we were exactly doing here. So I went out and I sought words of wisdom. So if you'll bear with me, this is what I found out, okay? Members, the amendment we adopted on the second reading goes directly against the federal laws that say non-tobacco nicotine products that filed in 2022 had to come off the market if they weren't given a granted order. This bill is now in contrast to that federal law. This may or may not have been the intent of those that offered that amendment up, but let me be clear, by creating this loophole, the bill becomes ineffective and indeed is a carve-out for the largest tobacco company in the world. We are now allowing illegal, disposable flavored vapes that are targeting our youth and constantly being found in our schools. These products are sending $3.5 billion per year back to the largest tobacco companies in the world that manufactures these. These are illegal products we are trying to address with this bill. I would like to offer a better solution to the vape shops in the state of Wyoming. This amendment would, number one, still require disposable products to meet 2016 and 2020 deadlines to get the bad actors out, but exempts from this bill entirely open, refillable products that vape shops sell and have built their business model on. These products are the basis of the vape shop industry, helpful in getting adult smokers, where'd he go, to quit, and not the current target of the federal enforcement. Anyone who opposes this amendment wants our stores to keep selling the illegal flavored disposable vapes that are being smuggled across our borders and putting our public health at risk. Remember, we already have adopted an amendment on the committee of a whole that extends the enforcement date way beyond that it would effectively protect our youth. That extension gives this body a chance to make changes next session if necessary. We have to start somewhere. And I ask yourselves, if not now, when? Next year will be, if not, next year we will be still having the same debate due to the lack of, on the part of the FDA. So I would appreciate an aye vote on the amendment and an aye vote on the bill.
Representative Provenza for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I'm kind of torn back and forth. At the end of the day, I think what this amendment is showing us is that this bill isn't ready for prime time. That we need to have discussions about these things in more depth with people in our communities, with our public health officials, with our businesses, and decide what makes the most sense over potentially an interim every time we get an amendment, this bill to me just gets more and more complicated. And I'm not sure what the outcome is. So, I mean, vote your conscience on the amendment, I guess, but I think all it does is demonstrate to us how complicated this issue really is and that we need to stop and take a breath.
All right, on the amendment this time, Representative Yen.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Sorry, I'm just struggling to try to read in the amendment with the bill, so I'm giving myself some time to do that. I think the concern with having this definition there is I'm not sure this definition actually affects anything in the bill. It just seems like it's a definition by itself that doesn't affect the legality of what is or isn't. And then the real significant part of the amendment is that it just deletes the second reading amendment, frankly. So I would ask you to vote against the amendment. And, you know, I think at this point, I would ask you to vote no on the bill too. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Conrad.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Just to clarify the previous speaker's comments. I'm okay.
Representative Conrad. It could be a sign we've talked too much this morning. I don't know. All right, Representative Conrad.
Oh,
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate bringer of this amendment. You know, heard loud and clear yesterday, 42 of us voted for an amendment that I don't think we frankly knew what we were doing with it. So I think that's a big portion, right? So that's the first thing. Secondarily, what this amendment is doing is attempting to do a little bit of a compromise, right? And so, yes, you do have the definitions that are in there. And the definitions are an attempt to, and I'll say an attempt, it may not be perfect. We're not very good at being perfect in here. And so what this amendment is trying to do is strike a little bit of a compromise. So the open vaping systems, right? The open vaping electronic cigarette that you see defined in here, that's a big portion of what the amendment is trying to, I don't want to say save or protect, but this is that we have a lot of businesses that are worried about this particular portion. Okay, those are the ones that you're hearing from. About 95% of the people that you're hearing from, they're worried about this particular piece of this amendment. And so we're trying to do that carve out. We're trying to do that right. And unfortunately, it's, you know, third reading and we have to do it. But I do want to say, I appreciate the minority floor leader's attention to detail here, that the big portion of this is striking that first amendment or second reading amendment. And it's striking that because, well, boy howdy, it was a good poison pill for this bill, because it puts this bill directly in conflict with US code. So, I mean, we pass this bill without this particular amendment, and the one that we had in it yesterday, and if it passes out of this House and the other body agrees to our amendments and we go down that path, we've got a bill that really doesn't do anything. So it's an attempt to compromise. We're not getting everything we want. You're not getting everything you want. That's literally the term of compromise, and that's what this bill is, or this amendment is trying to do. I appreciate the bringer of the amendment. It's certainly not what I would have done, but it's better than nothing at this point. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Penn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So what this amendment seeks to delete, the second reading amendment, I think we want the second reading amendment. My understanding of this is that the second reading amendment loops in one of the major proponents of this bill. If we're going to do this, let's be fair. Let's share this across the board. As far as the definitions, I don't know that they changed the bill other than the fact that now we're talking nicotine. We haven't had that discussion yet here. I think this is more about trying to squeeze out the little guy. So please no on this amendment.
Representative Stiff for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, just to the good representative from House District 47, the bringer of this amendment. I just want to say thank you for smoking. On and against.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Singh for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against this amendment for the purpose of the second portion of this. How a vape works, there are three different ways that a vape can work. It's either a single unit that's attached to a battery, and both the cartridge itself and the battery itself are thrown away. The second would be a vape that has a battery, but then a cartridge that you take off, and then you throw that part away, but you keep the battery. And then the third kind are vapes that have a battery on them, and the tank runs out of juice, and you fill it up. So this is effectively, this amendment takes the vape that is the least wasteful when it comes to actual things that you throw away. It takes that specific type of vape and removes it as a possibility on this registry. And so just because the methodology of the nicotine, the way that the nicotine is administered to the pen itself, I don't think that justifies removing that from the registry itself. So that's why I'm against this amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Second time before the sponsor, Representative Yin for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. The last speaker, I think that was actually really helpful in that we're exempting it by the type of e-cigarette and not the manufacturer of the e-cigarette, which is a really weird compromise, I would say. And the kind of thought that we would be in conflict with federal law, would we be causing these vendors to be in violation of federal law? Because if they would be in violation of federal law, wouldn't they be in violation whether or not they had this bill or not? So I guess I'm really confused on how having our bill be different than what's on the Fed's list violates federal law, because I think that seems really unlikely. So I think that's kind of a black helicopter that is one that doesn't actually really exist, frankly. So what I would say is that I think, again, if you want to keep that even playing field between that largest market shareholder of e-cigarettes and everybody else, then I think you need the amendment. Otherwise, I think you need to vote no on the bill. So I would say no on this amendment, so we keep the second reading amendment, and then a no on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right. Anybody else for their second time? Representative Davis, bring us home.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh.
Mr. Speaker?
Chairman Brown.
Thank you. Just briefly, the last comment about being in conflict with federal law versus, there's a point to that, and I'm not going to debate that he's incorrect or anything along those lines. What I would say in rebuttal to that is I would much rather have our state be in charge of regulating this and having the state enforcement mechanism rather than have a random FDA search. That random FDA search, that random penalty or that federal penalty is a heck of a lot higher. And when we start talking about those types of discussions, we do that a lot in this body. We say we'd rather have the state take care of this. We'd rather have the state be in charge of this rather than the feds. And so that's my only rebuttal to that. He's not incorrect. I would just venture to say that I think that the state is a much better suited position for this. And again, this is something very similar to the discussion we've had with cigarettes. I think this is a decent compromise. Again, not what I would have personally chosen, but it's better than nothing. So on and for this amendment.
Anybody else for their second time? Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Most of us were here last year at this time, right? And the same children brought this issue to us last year. We didn't get anything done last year. Here, I'm pretty sure it was the same person I talked to last session was here this session with this same issue. You know, this may not be the perfect bill, but by setting the date out until 2026 gives us a chance to fix this if there are some loopholes in there, okay? And as far as the federal law, I don't believe there's anything wrong with the state of Wyoming raising the bar above what the federal law, having a better system set up here than not, you know. So I would ask for an aye on the amendment, an aye on the bill. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 2 on Senate File 107 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. All right, third reading amendment number 2 on Senate File 107 has been adopted. Division being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 2, please rise. Thank you. All those opposed, please rise. Thank you. Third reading amendment number 2 has failed, 23 to 34. All right, Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 107 and will withdraw the motion at the appropriate time. So I think it's good to talk about this a little bit more. I am opposed to this bill. I'm with my good friend from the university town that thinks that maybe this isn't ready for prime time. I think it was probably a good idea in the future, but I think this particular bill is not ready. Because FDA has approved one of these vapes, it's safe. But anything that hasn't been approved is not a poison. It just hasn't been through an approval process. So I think we need to recognize that the administration that deals with food and drug, it has a backlog of these approvals. And I think we need to recognize that stores in our communities, we've seen them here, should have the opportunity to sell products that they believe are safe. So a lot of us got emails, and it wasn't just that email that we always get, oh, I'm a resident of whatever county, and here's the 3 talking points on whatever the bill is, and you get 100 of those in some cases from different people. If you read the emails about this topic, it was heartfelt emails, people laying out their struggle with this particular bill. The folks that were in the lobby talking to us are not hired guns. They're real people with real stores that took time off to come talk to us. So I think we need to be respectful of that. So I would ask for your no vote on this particular piece of legislation because it's not ready, because the people have not gotten together. Not that it's a bad idea, it's just not ready. Thank you.
Are you gonna withdraw that motion? Oh, yeah, well, is anybody gonna talk? Hopefully not.
I guess not. I withdraw my motion.
Good, thank you. All right. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 107 has been withdrawn. Chief, let's see, Senate File 107, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemande? No. Allred? No. Andrew? No. Angelos? No. Banks? No. Bear? No. Berger? No. Brown? No. Burkhart? No. Byron? No. Chadwick? Chestick? No. Clouston? No. Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrop? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storr? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 6 aye, 56 no.
Senate File 107, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 107 has failed to pass the House. Representative Pendergraft, do you have a privileger? Okay. All right, we are now at that order of business of Senate File. The next Senate File for our consideration is Senate File 118.
Senate File 118, sponsored by Senator Hicks. Bighorn and domestic sheep relocation, federal action, an act relating to wildlife and livestock being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 2, Senate File 118, ask for your favorable consideration. The good majority floor leader has asked me to ram this through.
Well, good luck on that then, Mr. Representative Pendergraft.
You must be kidding.
We need to laugh a little bit. We've had a lot of discussion, as I've said several times, about process. And essentially, the reason that I bring this amendment, which the purpose of the amendment is to delete the delay of the other amendment that sought to back this up for a year. And I would point out that this is not a new effort. This has been going on for over 20 years in trying to move this process forward. It's not a unique effort. There have been other projects around the state that have done similar things. There are some differences. I wanted everybody to understand that first point. This has been going on for a long time. This isn't something that has just suddenly popped up. This is something that has involved agencies, organizations, concerned parties, concerned citizens all across the board. There's been a lot of give and take, a push and pull in the discussion to get it to this point. And one of them, for example, is just the area of concern. Used to be a very broad area, basically went from highway to highway, which would affect a lot of landowners, a lot of other considerations. This area of concern has been narrowed greatly so that it affects fewer people and fewer issues. And I'm not going to try to belabor all of that, but I would like to have a little bit of conversation about some of the background in this. And there is other conversation that will come up shortly. I hear a lot of folks out there, and I myself went through a process of trying to wrap my head around what is actually involved here and to make a logical, intelligent, responsible vote. And in doing that, I got with a number of folks, including the original sponsor of this bill over on the west side of the building. And just kind of wanted to open up a little bit more discussion because I think a lot of people need a little bit more information before they make up their mind. Again, I urge an aye vote on this. Let's move this process forward, but let's have a discussion to work out the details. Thank you.
Representative Western for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, part of this job that we have is to compromise. And so while I don't think delaying is ideal, I think if this is what can help folks, ease the tension and make them feel more comfortable with it, so be it. So for that reason, I rise in opposition. Again, I think if the amendment that this amendment is referring to gives folks some ease and relieves at least a little bit of angst, so be it. And so I do appreciate the sponsor of this amendment, and I think he made some really valid points, but I think, I'm going to try to let a sleeping dog lie on this one, so I would encourage the body to vote no. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Is that Representative Penn? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have constituents that ranch in this affected area, and their concern is that we have trust issues with our feds, and I understand that the point of this bill is supposed to be that state can push back against Fed, and I'm usually all for that, though. The question is, what does the future hold? Do we trust that those relationships are there? The reason that I voted for the amendment that this amendment will delete is because at least if this comes to a court battle, at least we'll have the word of the Fed saying we will not mess with the concerns of my constituents are grazing rights. Are they going to open up the RMP in this area? And even if we don't trust that they're going to keep their word, at least in a court battle, that we have the opportunity to push back on that. And so I would be against this amendment. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Representative Pendergraft for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, body, for hearing me out. One of the issues that I had, as well as the last speaker, was this idea of trust. And the more I dug into this bill, the more I began to realize that it is leverage for us here in this state to be able to defend and control our own destiny. One of my fears is with that, by putting these animals in this area, we're going to invite federal intervention in the efforts of trying to protect them, and would begin to curtail the usage of this land in ways that we see fit. And one of the things this bill does say, if we see this happening, we're literally going to fly over there, we're going to dart these animals, and we're going to get them out of there. And then that's not an issue. So I see it as a way of asserting the state's right to have more game animals, to have the enjoyment from that, and still use, in effect, use those animals' presence as a way of staving off federal overreach. That's how I see it. I may or may not be right, although I almost always am. But anyway, I do urge your aye vote on this, and please vote your conscience.
All right. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 118 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 118 has been adopted. Division having been called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 2, please rise. All right, thank you. All those opposed, please rise. All right. Third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 118 has failed, 26 to 31. The next, oh, yes, we do. All right. Representative Conrad.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 118. Ladies and gentlemen, after that great discussion, I want to present to you, and more importantly, I guess to preface this, thank you for distributing my phone number to the 150 people that called me last night on this amendment. With that being said, what this does is it really clarifies some language that exists on my first amendment we discussed, I think, a day or two ago, where it says, and you can read that, but most importantly, all this amendment does is clarify, in layman's terms, specifically this, and I'll paraphrase. If the federal government doesn't do anything by July 1st, 2026, we enact this bill. So originally it said any event, not later than. So we've clarified that up so that people will stop calling me. So that people will understand that this just allows that 2-year delay, more importantly, to get our act together, to make sure we're compliant, et cetera, so forth. If we don't hear anything from the federal government by July 1st, 2026, we enact. But it gives us an opportunity to evaluate everything that's going on so we don't become in a head-on collision with our federal friends. So I look forward to any discussion with this, but it just clarifies again, we are going to enact July 1st, 2026 if nothing else happens. So with that being said and no other comments, I'd ask for your favorable consideration, vote aye.
Representative Pendergraft for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment, I do believe this is an improvement, and it does help add some clarity to what was there before. So I would encourage you to vote aye on this amendment and aye on the bill.
Anybody else? All right. Representative Conrad.
Thank you, buddy. Vote aye.
Okay, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 118 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Third reading amendment number 3 has been adopted. Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 118. And I ask and will withdraw it at the appropriate time. Okay, everybody, this bill is very, very dear to all of us, and it's very controversial depending on where you live, if you're a sportsman, if you're a rancher, if you are a wildlife person, outdoor person, or whatever. So I realize that, but I want you to consider some of the things that a group of people who are established in this particular area are facing. So if I could just have your patience for a few minutes, I just want to go over a few things. Okay, this bill is an act relating to wildlife and livestock, providing legislative findings, requiring the department that works with our animals and fish to relocate or remove bighorn sheep from the Sweetwater Rocks Cooperative Review Area in response to specified federal action, providing for reimbursement of costs for the relocation, requiring and authorizing Attorney General action as specified, amending the duties of the Wildlife Livestock Research Partnership Board, and providing appropriations. Okay, that's all great. But what I want to just take pause for a moment is we heard these animals will be removed immediately if something happens. These animals are delicate animals. When they are transported to a place, it takes a while because they are animals that get high stress, and that's proven. That is what causes a lot of their disease. So thinking we'll just move them over there and then we'll put them on trucks and move them out, it is not a viable solution. So I would just caution you with that at first. Secondly, yes, that's what I was going to say, it would kill them. I want to say there is no, last winter, it was when the winter was just awful, there was a meeting in the town in my county, the county seat. And at that meeting, there was all kinds of stakeholders there. At that meeting, we were told that there would be no movement or placement of these animals in this area until all of the landowners agreed. And that is what they promised, okay? I have a letter here. No landowner that lives on the river that is Sweet, that wants bighorn sheep located in the rocks that we're talking about, except 2 absentee landowners. Until the federal government puts in writing that no permits will be adversely impacted and the management plan not opened up, the landowners do not want reintroduced these bighorn sheep. I'll remind the body what the feds and environmentalists are doing in the in the RMP down in the southwest portion of our state already. The aggression has been there. We've stood up against that. I've just found out in the last couple days that a movement for 68,000 acres in my area is being possibly moved upon, that's been left alone since the 90s. And now we have this as well. I would ask you to just consider what the management plans are doing with specific animals that they are already doing. Do we have an elk problem? Yes. Do we have a 2-species deer problem? Yes. Were they supposed to be managed? Yes. Do we have a wild horse problem? Yes, we do. And all of those are supposed to be managed. The wild horses, 350 animal allotment has 2,500. So what I'm saying is that unless we have something specifically in writing, this goes back to the 3030 bill that I introduced 3 years ago, that it did not pass.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
What's your point?
We're not supposed to refer to legislation in previous sessions.
What did you say?
Mr. Chairman, I was under the impression that we are not supposed to reference legislation from previous sessions.
That's correct.
Okay, well, can I reference something that is in effect?
Well, you already read from a letter, which we're not supposed to do on the floor.
Oh, really? Well, I wrote it.
Okay, well, if you wrote it,
my
that's
notes.
fine.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
it's my notes, yeah. Whoa.
No, you're all right. You keep going. Just
Okay.
don't talk about legislation.
Okay, all right, let's
Unless
go.
it's this one. And this piece of
Point
legislation.
of order, yeah, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my co-representative. Okay, for the protection of these grazing rights out on this allotment, we need to have federal legislation that specifically states that grazing will not be impacted and the resource management plan will not be open due to any new management practices, introduction of these bighorn sheep. One of the things that they are very, very concerned about is that if they get there and if we have this plan, I mean, and I understand people worked really hard on this bill, but if you say, okay, put them in there, and if you do this, then we're gonna do this. Basically, the landowners are saying, you're giving our okay to go ahead and try it and to see what happens. And if you don't hold up, then we'll do this. And that is where their concern is. And the AUMs and things like that are so very important out there. These people have been out there for years. And let me just say one more little thing. For the idea that this would be a good time and a good place to put these animals, there's a lot of experimentation to see, and they were talking about that at the meeting in our county seat. And they were saying, we've had these 3 or 4 different groups. This one has succeeded, this one has not, this one has not. And so it's a very experimental kind of thing. But these sheep are different from most other big games, since most of these sheep occupy remote areas within designated wilderness areas. This area is not a wilderness area. So I would just ask you to consider what is going on, the aggression that we know. And I know we as a state need to hold to our state rights. I know that. And I really appreciate that we need to do that. But I don't know that this is the avenue to do it. So at this time, unless there's discussion.
Representative Ottman will let somebody else talk against it or for it or whatever. It's open season on the bill for 2 times to each person. So Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm feeling a little sheepish about the previous remarks that were made. You, EUE, need to listen to me. And that was bad. So I think some folks are confused that this is a reintroduction bill. This legislation is requiring or forcing the reintroduction, and it's not. Please look through it, because there's no wording, there's no verbiage in there directing or forcing our department that manages wildlife to do anything. There's nothing, no reference, no nothing in there. All the legislation says is, if this were to ever happen, these protections are going on the books. I mean, if we kind of think through the potential scenarios here, for example, to about 40 miles, 50 miles or so to the southeast in the Seminole Range, there are bighorn rams there. In the event that they ever migrated over there, there's nothing we have on the books protecting the wool growers in the Sweetwater Rocks area. This language does just that. If we look at the BLM, they've talked about it in their RMPs that, they want to promote wildlife, all that stuff. So we know what they want. We know what one of their strategic desires, their strategic objectives is. So this bill is basically saying, okay, we know what you want. Wildlife is the property of the state. In the event there was ever a reintroduction, whether it's 10 years, 15, 20, however many years, that these protections will apply. And if the BLM were to come in and start, downsizing some of these grazing allotments, this bill disincentivizes them by making it crystal clear that if they do any kind of adjusting to these grazing allotments or to these AUMs, the state's going to roll in with a bunch of helicopters, dart these things, and haul them off. So this bill has nothing to do with reintroduction. It does not require it. There's no shalls, any of that kind of stuff in here when it comes to the reintroduction itself. It just says, should this ever happen? And it will be years. Again, there's nothing saying that it will. There's been no commitments, public or private, from the executive, from the Wildlife Agency. This just simply says, if it ever happens at some point in the future, these are the protections that disincentivize the BLM to make adverse actions that impact some of our wool growers. So, on and against the amendment for the bill.
Representative Larson Lloyd for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you decide that you're going to bob the tail off this thing, I want to just share with you that I've attended some of these meetings as well, and the concern from the concurrent leaseholders, well, let me back up and say the current landowners where the possible relocation of bighorn sheep are the proponents of the relocation. The grazing right the lessees on public lands, both state and federal, surrounding that have real concerns. And in the meetings that have been going on over the last couple of years, particularly as the good sponsor of the amendment pointed out in my hometown, have real concerns because there's this ongoing threat that domestic sheep spread a virus and kill the bighorn sheep. And so we got to keep domestic sheep away from here and protect the bighorn sheep. And so if we transplant them there, then are we going to say to all of the leaseholders, now we've got this endangered or this specialized native transplanted species here, we're going to cut your AUMs or we're going to take away your lease altogether. It's a serious dang thing, and it's a big deal. And the concern for those livestock owners that around that area are similar to, it goes all the way to the center of the state, comes all the way up to Gas Hills and into our part of the world, is how do we know that we will be protected? If you'll read the contents of this bill, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to put in the belts and suspenders that say wild sheep. It's similar to what we done down in the Sierra Madres, where we said that if that domestic sheep grazing has priority over the introduction, and if there's a conflict, Fish and Game has to move the wild sheep out. And we're trying to put into place some sideboards here that says we want to protect domestic livestock in that industry, but if we can prove that they're compatible, perhaps we ought to consider reintroduction. But it's got to meet all of these things that this bill provides, which is not in place now, which is a serious and valid concern of the stock growers. And then one of the other concerns is how do we know? Well, we allocate some money in here for the Department of Agriculture to look at the spread of disease and to monitor that and to gather data so that we can make educated decisions on whether to introduce or not introduce bighorn sheep in that area. And what we have learned is you take the two herds, the one from up in the land of the warm springs, the warm winds, which is in District 33, those sheep wander. Man, you transplant them and they've gone 150 miles. But if you get up in that bighorn country, where that sheep population, where my good desk mate from appropriations shot a huge ram, they don't move. And that's what we have on the Ferris Mountains, is this population of sheep that just have not migrated and have stayed within that environment that they're comfortable with. Is that what this, and so they're trying to determine and get the information that would lend stability and legal precedence in adopting policy for our existing livestock industry, and yet collect data to determine if it's a reasonable thing to transplant. I think this bill is an important step to mitigating all of the conflict and the uncertainty that currently exists between those two entities that really both have good arguments on wanting to transplant sheep and then wanting to protect the industry that drives their livelihood. So I'd encourage a vote, an aye vote on the bill.
Representative Winter for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to echo the concerns that the sponsor of this amendment has brought forth. The situation in southwest Wyoming by this land management agency is not working out for them, and by introducing these sheep, it's just going to give another opportunity for this agency to direct its ire on the whole state of Wyoming, and not to mention the rest of the surrounding states. So this is not a this whole program is not good. And I would hope you would vote aye on this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the previous representative pointed out, over there in the Sierra Madres, we do run sheep next to the bighorns, okay? And we do have proof over there that when the sheep leave the area, they are retransplanted someplace else, you know? So we follow those regulations that are put out there to have that buffer zone between them. So there is no overreach from the government onto our domestic grazing. So it does work, and it is working in that particular instance.
Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, I can't help myself but join into this conversation. This bill will just get ahead of what we had to do a few years ago. There was a decision by, I don't think I better mention the name, but in a state west of us in the Forest Service that eliminated grazing leases on areas because of the possibility of disease from the mixing of these bighorns and the domestic sheep. So we enacted a couple of bills, and they both said that if there was a removal of the grazing leases for any reason, we would take these sheep out. That's a fairly difficult thing to do, and I think what the bill is trying to do is get ahead of that so we don't have to do it. And I think it's a good plan and a good bill. I guess if the people who manage these animals, I got a question answered. That's the other thing I want to say. What happened to the sheep that aren't there anymore? If this is a perfect habitat, and apparently they were hunted out around World War I. So for the body, that's why they aren't there now, which is a good answer. You've heard the term sheep without a shepherd. Well, these are sheep without a shepherd. So when they're a fragile animal, they just have to be cared for in some way. These animals are cared for by a habitat, and it has to be really good. So to the people managing those areas, I would caution them, if you do reintroduce, make sure you're not just putting them into an area where they'll languish for the next 20 years and never really be able to flourish like we would hope our wildlife would. But I think this is a good bill. We get ahead of things, and I'm not as concerned about that as I am federal hammers that come down and eliminate leases all of a sudden.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Representative Ottman, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just some comments before I'm done. First off, I want to thank all of you for that input, because one of the main things I wanted to get out here was the situation. A lot of you are probably familiar with the area that I'm talking about, and it's over south of Riverton in that area. There's 22 families over there that ranch. 2 of them, which are the owners of this property where the sheep would be, are in agreement for that, but 20 are not. They've been out there and they've been grazing. Their animals, the allotments are very precious, not only to the families and the ranchers, but also to our communities and the food supply. We in Wyoming are known for our beef and that what we produce. With the introduction of certain predators and things, that cuts down on different things, with shortages of land, that cuts down on things, with reintroduction of things, and depending on what happens this next year, we'll all be in charge of that. We may not realize, and that's what these landowners are up against. What will we do if an aggressive federal government comes in and just pushes through? What if the changes that are made, what will we do as a state? This bill says that the governor may tell the attorney or the chief officer of our state may tell his lawyer to do some things, but it says may. They may decide. So who is going to make those decisions? So there is not a firm, this is what's going to happen in here. So we all have different ideas about the way things are going to go. We've talked about different law enforcement in our state. And I just want us to realize that this is a real threat, that these ranchers, this is everything that they have. And so while it seems in the state as a minority, it's not really. And so as we look at introduction of a lot of things, we see how it can go from just an introduction to a protected species. So I would just ask for your, I'm going to ask for your no vote, because that's what the people that I represent need to hear. If we want to put something in here that, and have an agreement by the federal government that absolutely under no situation will those AUMs be lowered, awesome. But we can all see that the hand is pushed, and it's pushed hard. And if that group of people, that small group, and we can see it here, if they don't have the support of the state, what will they have? So I withdraw. Okay, how do I do this? Okay.
Just say you withdraw the amendment and all.
I withdraw the amendment, and I thank you for your time and your input, and ask that you vote no. Thank you.
Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 118 has been withdrawn. Senate File 118 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand. Elred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Klauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrop. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez-Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stith. Storr. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 52 aye, 10 no.
Senate File 118 having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 118 has passed the House. The next, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, maybe you can come take the helm. And next bill for our consideration is Senate File 132.
Senate File 132, sponsored by Senator Kolb. American Rescue Plan Act Appropriations Amendments 4, an act relating to the emergency expenses of government being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments. Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. At this time, I'll move third reading amendment to Senate File 132, third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 132, and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, what this does is deletes the second reading amendment from yesterday and gives the governor maximum flexibility in the use of these funds. So I'll ask for your favorable consideration at this time.
Anyone for the first time? Question being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 132, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 132 has been adopted. Division being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 132, please rise. All those opposed? Less than 35. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 132 has been adopted. And we have Representative Zwanitzer. Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I'm pleased to bring you third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 132. Ladies and gentlemen, on page 28 and 29, this just eliminates section 8, which says that this bill takes precedent over the budget compromise. It also has similar ARPA language in it, which also has similar language in it that it takes precedent. And so one of them has to give, and I don't want to impair the good budget on getting the votes it needs on both sides and conflicting with this. So I'm just trying to take this language out. My good co-sponsor of the amendment may need to say more. Great minds think alike, but at some point, something had to give, and I think it should be this bill, and we should, although we haven't heard the budget conference committee report yet, I do believe it's important. The agreements in that bill should outweigh anything in this bill before us. As for your favorable, I vote.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
So putting this kind of language into bills is common, that we see it in that one bill will preside over another or have priority over another. And then sometimes what you have happen is you get to the end and both bills are on the same track and conflict, like we have with this bill and the budget bill, and the contents of this bill are in the budget bill, vice versa, the contents of the budget bill are in this bill. So then how do you resolve that? If they both pass, the last action taking, which it would be the signature of the governor, is on that bill. So if the Senate, if they both pass the budget bill in the Senate file, if the governor signed the budget bill first and signed the Senate file last, that would be the last action and that would preside. Just kind of want the body to understand how that works, and so then that language would have priority. If it was the other way around, budget bill, then the language in the budget bill would preside. But just so you understand, we've got an amendment coming up that I think that you'll see relating to some conversation earlier before we adjourn for lunch, that we also that is beneficial, that we put in the budget bill on the House side. So I think that these really are coming down, running parallel with the amendment that we just adopted. They're just very similar, and this just makes felt that this was the appropriate action to take on the work that's been done.
Anyone else for their first time? Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I guess before we vote on this, I would like to hear from the joint conference committee on the budget to know what the differences may be between these two bills.
Anyone else for their first time? Anyone else for their first time? Anyone for their second time? Representative Larson Lloyd.
The language in the budget bill on the distribution of the ARPA funds is very, very similar. So the action, what it does in the budget bill is give the governor the authority to reallocate those funds that haven't been spent, similar to what's in this bill. So all of those programs that still have funds remaining that haven't been allocated, he has the ability to do that as he deems is appropriate. And then we've got an amendment that is not in this bill yet that deals with a water tank north of here that was put in at noon. And then we don't have priorities in the budget bill, which we just took out of this bill.
Anyone else for their second time? And question being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 132, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. House third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 132 has been adopted. Division being called. With enthusiasm, all those in favor of House third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 132, please rise.
I know. Tell Ember to stand still. What?
All those opposed? Okay, less than 36. House third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 132 has been adopted. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you. I would move third reading of amendment number 3 to Senate File 132 and ask for your favorable consideration, ladies and gentlemen. So we had an earlier debate regarding a water tower in the town of Wheatland. And it occurred to me while we were having that discussion that there's a nice location of federal dollars that are basically for this type of a project to help finish off those dollars. And so what this does is it adds a Section 5 and appropriates $2 million to the town of Wheatland for its water tank using ARPA dollars, if they're available and if it qualifies. So I appreciate your aye vote.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple things on this. Stipulations for this would be that it would have to be allocated by December and expended in the next calendar year. That won't be an issue. So this definitely would be a good qualification, and obviously would love the opportunity to see the funding come from this source. So would ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against this amendment. The committee, when we worked on this, we intentionally did not put in particular community projects for the very reason that it would just open the floodgates for every one of us sitting on this floor to bring our community's project. We'd run out of money, and the last person in this room that had the amendment filed would be the one that ended up with the project. And so that's why we left it to others outside of here that could evaluate the projects based on need. Last year, we had plenty of money, or not plenty of money, but we had millions and millions of dollars for doing these sorts of projects across the state, communities all over put in multiple applications trying to vie for these projects, and it went through a good vetting process. Whether or not this one rose to the top, I don't know. I don't know if it was even applied for. But we had a process for this, and so I'm just concerned that this is not the appropriate way that we need to go about allocating these dollars. We have money in this current bill that if this is a project that's eligible and it works through the appropriate mechanisms, it would be available, and then it could. But for us to come in here on the very second to last day, last moment, and then insert a community's individual project, I just don't think is the appropriate way to go about allocating these dollars. I appreciate the compassion, but I just don't think it's the appropriate way to go about doing this. So again, on and against the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Ottman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment, what I will say is that I appreciate the process in that while there are bills put out, there are amendments brought. I also would ask that we consider whether this is going against a rule or if this is looking at a community, not to pick one over the other, but how many of us have communities right now that are in crisis? You know, I had a community that had some issues and they went to the board that they can go to. But this is an event, procedures have been followed, steps have been taken, an avenue has been opened up that wasn't known about before. And I would ask that you vote aye for these people and for this community. If we are going to even show our faces in this state and have an extreme emergency like this with the trailers and the schools and everything else that can be destroyed by that water tank. And you all can laugh and smile if you feel so inclined to, but I grew up in a place near a town named Johns where in the middle of the night, a dam broke and killed people 100 years ago, and they still talk about it. It was unbelievable. Nobody thought it would ever happen, not to them. And this could be the same thing for these people. So I would just ask you to think, and this, compared to the money that we've spent, is money well spent. So please vote aye.
Representative Swanitzer Dan for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And while this is probably not the best process either, it is better than the water process that I spoke against earlier. And I would remind the body not to talk about other bills, but on the third reading of the budget, after we had lost some funds on second reading, we did have various legislators in Campbell County and Sheridan County and Johnson counties come to this body and say, we need some funding for our projects, and fought it out in a very similar way for the similar funding. And I honestly don't know if those projects are in the budget or not, but that was a better process. And so I didn't talk on the other amendments, but I have learned that we have a little more money sitting around than I expected and what we knew about 6 weeks ago. And so I also think this would be an appropriate use of the funds. If we can help out this community, I thought the legislator from that community made a compelling case, which made it very difficult for me earlier this morning. So I'm very happy they found a way potentially to try to get them some funding and help out their community. But again, we shouldn't make this a practice. But at this point, this is only, we got to spend the money by the end of the year. And this sounds like a good way to spend it.
Representative Yin for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So I have two questions. One, from what I heard from the last speaker, is that we have some extra money, I guess, from ARPA. It'd be good to know where that money came from and how much of that money we have, just so we as appropriators can understand like what the account looks like. So I'd like an answer to that. And then two, why wasn't, so this is a question for the good representative from Platte County who this amendment is addressing. Why wasn't this in a previous ARPA bill or in the bill before this amendment now? Why didn't we pursue this funding for that project before?
Representative O'Hearn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. If you look on this, all this money would come out of Section B on line, or page 23, line number 6. Any unappropriated funds and funds reverted in subsection A of this section are hereby reappropriated to the office of the governor for the programs and purposes specified in this section. So it can revert and go to this good quality job that's already been started. On
Representative Larson Lloyd for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to maybe answer a couple of questions, and I'd first just say coulda, woulda, shoulda, maybe previously, but here's where we're at. And so of those funds that were directed to not to project, to programs, there's about $54 million that can be reallocated. Then we anticipate perhaps up to another, and it's a bit of a swag, I always use about 30, some people use more, I've heard less, about an additional 30 million that may possibly be for projects that have been funded but can't get construction done or run into other tangles that are going to revert back here between now and September 1st.
Representative Jennings, no? Okay. Anyone else for their first time? Anyone for their second time? Sponsor interested in speaking again? Okay. We are voting on House third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 132. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. House third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 132 has been adopted. Senate File 132, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Elliman. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Harrelton. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Newsom, Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez-Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stiff.
Aye.
Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Stivar, no. To aye. Further changes. Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 no.
Senate File 132, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 132 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 83.
Senate File 83, sponsored by Management Council. Reviser's Bill, an act relating to the revision of statutes and other legislative enactments being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have an amendment. Representative Larson Lloyd. Representative Larson Lloyd in the House. He is. On Senate File 83, the controversial revisers bill.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move third reading amendment number 1 to House, it's the Senate File 83. This is an amendment to the revisers bill, folks. We had, as you understand, this is how we make all the last minute corrections in our statutes that have been identified over the interim. And in this amendment, what we had in this session is we had House Bill 83, which is public retirement, actuarially determined contributions, and Senate File 67 was the public employees retirement plan. Both have passed. But there's conflicting language in there dealing with the same, with the retirement plan. And so they would like to change the date change the scratch through the date, as you can see there. They scratch through and thereafter, and scratch through the year 2021, and then that makes these 2 new bills that we adopted conform and not be a problem in the future in the green books. So I'd be happy to. So, Mr.
Question being called.
Mr. Chairman, in non-compliance with Rule 12-4, I would ask that we do not take the ayes and nays. If we can get the
Sadly,
seconds.
no ayes and noes to be called on the. We are on House third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 83. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? House third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 83 has been adopted. Senate File 83, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Klauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Harrelson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez-Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stiff.
No.
Storer. Strzok. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Stiff. No to aye. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 55 aye, 7 no.
Okay. Senate File 83, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 83 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 54.
Senate File 54, sponsored by Revenue. Homeowner tax exemption, an act relating to taxation being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Surprisingly enough, we have amendments on a property tax bill. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill, or to Senate File 54. And I know we've talked this one to death, so I'll be brief. But in short, is what this does is this moves the bill where it is currently at 25% to 30%. And then it modifies the dates to turn it to a 2-year program. And then it bumps up the appropriation to 170 million from 125 million. Just a quick summary in short, I know people will ask me about the numbers. Moving it from 25% to 30% moves the numbers up a little bit from where they currently are to about 136 million for the first year, 140 for the second year. So I know the appropriation doesn't cover it. That at the end of the day, I'd like to leave a little bit more money in the people's pockets in the next 2 years. I think that would give us an opportunity to work the program, give people some relief at the same time, give us opportunity to maybe work enhancements and changes to the program that might help us. Please vote aye on the amendment. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Storer for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. At least the math I've got means that if we were to take this amendment, we'd be back over $300 million. It's a 20% increase. It's a doubling, and that's just more than we can afford. I don't think that's necessary, I really think we're close to getting something that we can all agree on, and we should stick with where we are. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we are just kind of Groundhog Day in it here. We discussed this yesterday, and this makes it an awfully big 2-year. So right now we've limited this to 1. Then some of these other tax relief bills that we have going through will be implemented. So this is meant to be a short-term help for next year. And if we just do the 1 year and keep it at 25%, which we've discussed, it's still a big help. It's 25% for everybody in your community, but it's also fiscally manageable. So, we're working on a few amendments that I think that we can maybe come to a resolution. Just resist this at this juncture, if you would, please. Thank you. Vote no.
Anybody else for the first time? Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. I think really for doubling of the price, the 2-year deal, but just talking about how this affects the average person in Wyoming, take Teton County out, and the average home price is nearly $4 million. The top residential assessed property in Wyoming is $92 million. But just so they'll get this benefit of this 30%, but up to $3 million. But the average without Teton County is about $300,000. So this will just under $100. Now, for the person at $3 million, this amendment will add $1,400. It'll go from $4,900 to over $6,000 in benefit. Average Wyoming, it'll go from about $500 to $600. So I don't know. I just have a problem with that. I think most of our homes are in this 300,000 area, and I want to focus on the most people. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please vote no.
Representative Stivar for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honor for this amendment. A couple of speakers ago said it was a 20% increase. I'm looking at a 5%. Could I get that explained? How it's a 20%?
All right, anybody else for their first time? Second time before the sponsor. Representative Storer for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just would like to clarify that an additional 5% on 25% is 20%. Thank you.
Anybody else? Representative Locke, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just trying to move the number up a little bit, give a little bit more, leave a little more in our pockets, our people's pockets. Please vote aye on the amendment.
All right. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 54 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 1 has failed. The next amendment would be Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully withdraw third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 54.
Much favored at this time. Third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 54 has been withdrawn. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So here's another shot at it. I'd like to, this one's very simple. It takes 25%, turns it into I move third read amendment number 3 to Senate File 54. Sorry. This is very simple. It's all it does. It takes the 25%, turns it into a 2-year program. Again, trying to get a little bit more back in the people's pockets. Please vote aye.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I'd urge your no vote. This one now puts that second year on the back of local governments. We've tried to use state money to backfill local money on these, but now that 130 million or so will come out of your county budgets, city budgets, school budgets. So please vote no. Thank you.
Anybody else? Does the sponsor want another bite, or are you good? One more time. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please vote aye on this amendment. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 54, the corrected copy, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 3 has failed. Next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 54. Chairman Harshman.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully withdraw third reading amendment number 4. It's got a little work to do on it. Thank you.
All right, third reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 54 has been withdrawn. The next amendment for our consideration is Representative Stiff.
Mr. Speaker, I move House third reading amendment number 5 to Senate File 54 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, what this amendment does is it reduces the $3 million threshold to $2 million. That reduces the cost of the bill from about the 114, 125, 120 range down to just a little over $100 million. I think that's prudent. It still applies. It'll still give relief to those folks who live in a 1,200 square foot house in Teton County. And it'll give a lot of relief to most folks across the state. So I think this is prudent. We're giving everything else about the bill would remain the same. So please vote aye.
Representative Storer for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, it's just, we really are trying to find compromise here. We really are trying to address those that have been most impacted by these increased property values in the northwest part of the state. It is, while I appreciate the intent, this will significantly reduce the amount of relief for folks in northwest Wyoming. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is we have lower mill levies. So the value of the reduction is actually less. We also have higher land values. And so because the exemption is on the structure and not on the property altogether, that also is reduced. So we're already looking at about a 5% reduction from what the rest of the state would get by dropping this to 2 million. It actually really does hurt those middle-class homeowners whose homes are in that $2 million range and up. So I'd appreciate some room to negotiate, I guess, and see if we can stick with the 3 million. Thank you.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment, I think, talking about the numbers again, most Wyomingites are going to continue to have their same benefit. Most of the homes in Wyoming, Mr. Speaker, 97% of the homes will continue to have their same benefit, actually probably 98 or 99%. And what that does is dropping from 3 to 2, it caps out that maximum benefit around the state at about 4,900 down to about 3,300. Teton County, yeah, a little bit different because they don't have as many mills. I think drop it probably about 4,000 down to about 2,700 or so. But I think for the 98, 99% of homeowners in Wyoming, we'll get a 25% property tax break in 1 year. And then if we pass the rest of these measures with cap bills, along with the refund program, Mr. Speaker, and then our long-term homeowners, we're going to have a significant body of work done in this 67. So on and for the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, I think we want to give the relief to the people who are actually paying the taxes, and I believe this helps in that regard. Also, when we talk about cost, usually when we talk about cost, we relate that from the perspective of what does it cost the government. And I would just ask that we consider what does it cost the people if we fail to respond. Thank you.
Representative Byron for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for this amendment body, we have gone around and around in committee. This bill looks significantly different than it did when it came out at interim, and I think this is a pretty good, even level compromise. It certainly helps the folks on the northwest edge of the state. It also helps some folks on the northeast side of the state, and just I guess it would be east of that first beautiful national park. So I think this is a good compromise. It solves the problem we're trying to solve, so on and for.
Representative Hornock for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that I truly appreciate about the county up in the northwest corner is that they have the lowest property taxes in the state of Wyoming, the lowest mill levy. So just consider that. That is good, in my opinion, of what they're doing up there. But by voting in favor of this amendment, we're kind of saying that, we want to leave these rich people off of this. Is that really what the message we want to send? Is that really what we want to do? It could be that somebody's just been in their home for many, many years, and their assessed value of that home has climbed up over the $2 million mark. I think if we're looking at fair and equitable property tax breaks across the board, I think we need to resist this amendment, and let's just give people a break on their property taxes. I urge a no vote on this amendment. Thanks.
Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against. So it's pretty close, but we heard the change in the fiscal note, and it isn't that much. And I guess, so what you're looking at, so in that 10, 15, hope I'm not stating it wrong, $1 million difference, I think one of the things that tends to happen is we do say the rich people. But I think what we have to understand, what's happened in some of those counties in the Northwest, is that those could be relatively modest homes. And when you start looking at at what they're going to be paying in taxes when you're at $2 million, then they're paying $10,000 in property tax. So that little bit, I know it's still significant money, but that little bit would hit those people that are paying really high property taxes. And I think that's what we were trying to do here, is maybe try to hit that group. So obviously we're a little split on this one as to where we stand, but I think we can resist this and keep it where it was.
Representative Nicholas for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, on and in favor of this amendment, this is exactly where we need to be in order to get to where we want to go. On in favor.
Anybody else for their first time? Second time before the sponsor, Representative Storer for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had a lot of conversations with all of you about how we can address these high property values. And a lot of folks have said, well, we just can't fix Teton County. There's just nothing we can do. We can just throw up our hands. But you know, I had a constituent write me this morning about how they're just trying to hold on to their grandfather's house that he built back in the 60s. And it means a lot to them. Teton County's median tax liability is over 4 times that of any other county. Think about that. And these are the middle-class folks that we're trying to help. They are our working class. There are teachers, there are nurses, there are construction workers, there are restaurant workers. And they've really been hit the hardest. So I ask if you would at least come up with a plan that attempts to treat them equitably here in the equality state. So on and against, thank you.
Representative Stith for your final time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, folks. So let's talk about the restaurant worker who owns a house worth $2.5 million, $2.5 million. And that could well be in Teton County. So for that person right now, they have to pay about $16,000 in annual tax, property tax. That's a big burden. If I'm, a server in a restaurant and I have to pay $16,000 in tax right now in my $2.5 million home, that is a huge, huge burden. We adopt this amendment, what will they have to pay? Well, they'll have to pay about $3,000 in property tax. They will still, yes, have to pay something, but the first $2 million, they get a break on. So I just think this is a good balance. I think when we're trying to direct public policy, remember these property taxes aren't coming to the state. They're going 70% to schools. And we got to figure out how to fund our K through 12 education and keep it on an even keel, not just this biennium, but 10 years from now. Once we do this, folks, once we give this big tax break, which people need, once we give them a big tax break, that's likely, even though we say this is only for 1 year, it's likely to stay there for a really long time. So on and for.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 5 to Senate File 54 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 5 to Senate File 54 has been adopted. Division being called. All those in favor, please rise. right, thank you. All those opposed, please rise. All right. Good call on that division. Third reading amendment number 5 has failed 29 to 32. Representative Locke, I believe you have another amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully withdraw third reading amendment number 6 to Senate File 54.
Yay, highly popular. All right, third reading amendment number 6 to Senate File 54 has been withdrawn. Senate File 54 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Plouston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Warnock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stith. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanzer Dan. Zwanzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Provenza, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 no.
Senate File 54, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 54 has passed the House. Well, I think that's the one we've been looking for, right? All right, Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to 12-11, having voted on the prevailing side, I move for a reconsideration of Senate File 41.
Okay, that's non-debatable. And so the first vote is to reconsider this is Senate File 41. What's the name of the bill? Maybe I'll just throw that out there. Yeah, Banking Division. So the first vote is to reconsider the vote. Okay, so if you want to reconsider the vote, you vote aye. If you don't want to reconsider the vote, vote no. So Chief Clerk, on that motion to reconsider on Senate File 41, please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. I'm sorry. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick.
Excuse.
Chestick. Plouston. Crago, or I'm sorry, Conrad.
No.
Crago. Davis. Eklund, Harrelson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hornock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrup, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stiff, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwanitzer Dan, Zwanitzer Dave, Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Allemand, aye. To no. Further changes? No. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 33 aye, 29 no.
By your vote, you have voted to reconsider Senate File 41. So now we're back on the main question, which is whether to pass Senate File 41. So if you vote yes, you want to pass Senate File 41. If you vote no, you don't want to pass. Chief Clerk, please call the roll on the original question.
Allemand? Allred? Repeat. Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Harrelson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stiff? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 33 aye, 29 no.
Senate File 41, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 41 has passed the House. Are there any more zombie bills out there? No? All right. Well, Chief, looks like we got some reconsiderations and conference committee reports. We'll do messages? Messages from the Senate? Messages from the Senate.
Message 294, Joint Conference Committee Report adopted. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 44, Limited Mining Operations Amendments. The Senate adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 21, noes 9, excused 1. Message 296. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 6, Nursing Home Administrators, Temporary Licenses. Ayes 30, excused 1. Message 297. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 109, Prohibit Red Flag Gun Seizure Act. Ayes 30, excused 1. Message number 298. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 42, Low Carbon Reliable Energy Standards Amendments. The Senate failed to concur on House amendments to the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 13, noes 16, excused 1, conflict 1. Message 299. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 23, Public Utilities, Energy Resource Procurement. Ayes 29, excused 1, conflict 1. Message 300. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 99, Chloe's Law, Children Gender Change Prohibition. Ayes 28, noes 2, excused 1. Message 301. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 24, Public Service Commission Integrated Resource Plans. Ayes 29, excused 1, conflict 1. Message 302. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 47, Law Enforcement Retirement Contributions. Ayes 29, noes 1, excused 1. Message 303. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 67, Public Employee Retirement Plan Contributions. The Senate failed to concur on House amendments to the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 15, noes 14, excused 1, conflict 1. Message 311. Mr. Speaker, the Senate appointed Senate conferees to meet with the Light Committee Number 1 from the House on amendments to Senate File 67. The Senate conferees are Senator Kinski, Chairman, Senator Beitman, Senator Hicks. Message 304. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 125, Parimutuel Wagering Activities Amendments. Ayes 22, noes 8, excused 1. Message 306. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 34, Sex Offender Registration Registerable Offenses. The Senate recedes for its non-concurrence and adopts the following House amendments. Ayes 29, noes 1, excused 1. Message 307. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 77, Homeland Defense, Infrastructure Reporting and Investigating. Ayes 30, excused 1. Message 308. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 86, School Safety and Security Funding. Ayes 26, noes 4, excused 1. Message 309. Mr. Speaker, the Senate appointed Senate conferees to meet with the Light Committee Number 1 from the House on amendments to Senate File 42. The Senate conferees are Senator Rothfuss, Chairman, Senator Cooper, Senator Dockstader. Message 310. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 4, Property Tax Refund Program. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 30, ayes 30, excused 1. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 45, Property Tax Exemption Residential Structures and Land. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Ayes 29, noes 1, excused 1. Message 313. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 92, Protection of Parental Rights. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Ayes 28, noes 2, excused 1. Message 314. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 19, Developmental Preschool Funding, ayes 30, excused 1. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
All right, I need to appoint a couple of conference committees. So JCC 1 on Senate File number 42 will be Burkhart Chair, Conrad Lawley. JCC 1 on Senate File 67, Walters Chair, Stiff, Larson Lloyd. But I don't. All right, we're at that order of business of consideration of joint conference committee reports. The next report for our consideration is Joint Conference Committee number 1 on Senate File 44, Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, we met with our counterparts down the hall, and they agreed to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 that we put on Senate File 44, Committee of the Whole Amendment, or I'm sorry, Standing Committee Amendment 1, and third reading amendment. We agreed to come to a compromise and meet in the middle. So if you remember right, in that bill, there was a 1,000-foot setback if you are on state lands for a limited mining operation for sand and gravel. We dropped that to 500 feet, somewhat consistent with other setbacks we have in statute. And then at the end of that, we had required that the holder of the LMO permit get agreement from our office that deals with state lands, and decided that requirement was duplicate because they have to get that agreement first, then they have to get a county conditional use permit, and what we were requiring them was then to go back and redo everything with the office that handles state lands, so we dropped that. So pretty much what we did on this floor is stayed intact with some minor changes, and I would ask for your aye vote on concurrence with Joint Conference Committee 1. And I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, I move that report.
Thank you. I forgot to ask you to. Anybody want to talk on this one? No. All right. We are voting on Joint Conference Committee Number 1 on Senate File 44. A majority of elected members is required to adopt the report. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Allemand? No. Allred?
Excused.
Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Harrelson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Warnock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Newsom? Nicholas?
Excused.
Nemec? Northrop? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Repeat? Slagle? Smith? Stiff? Storr? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? All read, excused to. Harrelson? Aye to no. Further changes? Smith? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 47 aye, 14 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to adopt Joint Conference Committee Number 1 on Senate File Number 44. So I'm going to be speaking to Chairman Harshman here. So would you be ready for any of those that are coming, that are your bills? I think that would be, I think it's House Bill 4, House Bill 45. You got them right there? Yeah, so I'll gear us up here for that then, if you're ready. Yeah, and then Chairman Northrop, you'd be probably following that on House Bill 92. You don't have it yet? Okay. Sir, we're at that order of business of request to concur with Senate amendments to House bills. The first message for our consideration is message number 312 on House Bill 45, Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd move message number 312, concurrence request on House Bill 45. And members, I'd ask you to vote no on this. I think we need to go to a conference committee. And it's a classic, the bill passed out of here with a 5% cap. The other body put a 3%, and we probably should get together and talk about it and compromise somewhere in the middle. So stand for any questions and urge your no vote so we can get together with our friends down the hall and visit a little bit and get this bill finished up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right. We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 45. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? What? Yin? Swanser Dan? Swanser Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Brown, aye to no. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 25 aye, 36 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to not concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 45. The JCC 1 will be Crago Chair, Northrop, Zwanitzer Dan. Let's get I just have to wait for more paperwork. Okay, the next message for our consideration is message number 310 on House Bill 4. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd move message number 310, concurrence request on House Bill 4, property tax refund program. And members, once again, unfortunately, I have to ask you to vote no on this concurrence. I think everything they did, our counterparts, was real good. The part we added as a joint committee over this work over the interim was this part about potential audits. And not that every, 10,000 applications be audited, but just an occasional random audit. And for some reason, that was taken out of the bill at the other end of the hall. And so we'd just like to visit and ask why that is. So ask for your no vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right. We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 4. A majority of elected members is required. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Ellamand? I'm sorry. Ellamand? Allred? Andrew? Repeat? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Excused? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storr? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters?
Excused.
Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
No.
Are there any changes? Walters? Singh, aye to no. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote? Winter? No. Closing vote? Vote closed. 21 aye, 40 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to not concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 4. The conference committee will be Oakley Chair, Storr, and Byron. All right, the next message for our consideration is message number 313 on House Bill 92 Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for concurrence on Message 313 on House Bill 92 and ask for your no vote. Okay, so this is parental protections for parental rights, and they have went in and created an exemption in the Wyoming Governmental Claims Act, basically taking out the immunity clause, and would like to go in and ask them why. So please vote no. Oh.
We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 92. A majority of elected members is required. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Klauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas, excused. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stith. Storer. Strzok. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Zwanitzer Dan, can you repeat? Are there any changes? Storer, aye to no. Further changes? Andrew, no to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 24 aye, 37 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to not concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 92. The conference will be Stith, Chair, Klauston, Lawley. All right. I think that clears the deck. 8 o'clock. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. 8 a.m.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand adjourned until, yes, folks, 8 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, just a second.
Don't we
Oh,
have 166?
oh, I got enrolled acts, sorry.
Oh. No, we're going to be back here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, tomorrow afternoon now, so.
Fortunately, didn't get that I'm not going to act on that motion. Okay, we're at that exciting business of the signing of enrolled acts. The first enrolled act for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 48, being original House Bill 104.
House Enrolled Act 48, being original House Bill 104, an act relating to water development projects, authorizing specified Level 1 and Level 2 studies, providing appropriations, requiring reports, providing for the revision of unexpended funds, authorizing unobligated funds to be used to complete other designated projects as specified, providing an appropriation for the Office of Water Programs, transferring funds from the general fund to the Water Development Account 1, clarifying authority of the Wyoming Water Development Commission regarding Inflation Reduction Act funding for drought mitigation projects and regional conservation partnerships program funding, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 48, being original House Bill 104. I have so signed. Okay, the next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 36, being original Senate File 123.
Senate Enrolled Act 36, being original Senate File 123, an act relating to the Code of Civil Procedure, authorizing natural or adoptive parents or legal guardians to change a minor child's name without giving public notice of the name change and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 36, being original Senate File 123. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 37, being original Senate File 114.
Senate Enrolled Act number 37, being original Senate File 114, an act relating to city, county, state, and local powers, requiring local governments to recognize and grant reciprocity to contractor licenses issued by a Wyoming county, city, or town, specifying conditions for reciprocity and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 37, being original Senate File 114. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 38, being original Senate File 105.
Senate Enrolled Act number 38, being original Senate File 105, an act relating to the administration of government, prohibiting disclosure or use of protected information relating to firearms and ammunition sales as specified, providing exceptions, providing requirements for disclosures, authorizing civil actions, providing definitions, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 38, being original Senate File 105. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 39, being original Senate File 96.
Senate Enrolled Act number 39, being original Senate File 96, an act relating to banks, banking, and finance, specifying when certain accounts shall not be deemed assets or liabilities of financial institutions for the purpose of receivership, conservatorship, or bankruptcy, amending requirements for banks providing custodial or fiduciary services for digital assets, providing definitions, making conforming amendments, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 39, being original Senate File 96. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 40, being original Senate File 80.
Senate Enrolled Act number 40, being original Senate File 80, an act relating to environmental quality, amending the definitions of solid waste and solid waste management facility, providing definitions of advanced recycling and advanced recycling facilities, requiring rulemaking and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 40, being original Senate File 80. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 41, being original Senate File 73.
Senate Enrolled Act number 41, being original Senate File 73, an act relating to weapons, amending the eligibility requirements for a person to receive a permit to carry a concealed firearm as specified, specifying applicability and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 41, being original Senate File 73. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 42, being original Senate File 57.
Senate Enrolled Act number 42, being original Senate File 57, an act relating to public health and safety, creating a hearing aid program for hearing impaired adults as specified, requiring rulemaking, providing appropriations, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 42, being original Senate File 57. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 43, being original Senate File 53.
Senate Enrolled Act number 43, being original Senate File 53, an act relating to the judiciary, providing for an additional district judge for the sixth judicial district, specifying requirements for suitable facilities, providing an appropriation, authorizing positions, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 43, being original Senate File 53. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 44, being original Senate File 52.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 44, being original Senate File 52. An act relating to trade and commerce, amending the Wyoming Stable Token Act to allow for investments in cash and government securities as specified, authorizing the Wyoming Stable Token Commission to issue different types and amounts of stable tokens and to contract with financial services providers, requiring reporting only for fully reserved stable tokens as specified, providing for a competitive bidding and procurement process, making conforming amendments to criminal history record statutes, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 44, being original Senate File 52. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 45, being original Senate File 27.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 45, being original Senate File 27. An act relating to special districts, providing an exception to special districts bond elections for improvement in service districts and water and sewer districts as specified, specifying applicability and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 45, being original Senate File 27. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 46, being original Senate File 26.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 46, being original Senate File 26. An act relating to special districts, clarifying the term of office for members of the special district governing body that filled a vacancy and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 46, being original Senate File 26. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 47, being original Senate File 35.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 47, being original Senate File 35. An act relating to public records, applying the investigatory records disclosure exception to Department of Corrections records as specified and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 47, being original Senate File 35. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 48, being original Senate File 34.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 48, being original Senate File 34. An act relating to criminal procedure, inserting and amending offenses for which convicted offenders must register as a sex offender, repealing the definition associated with sex offender registration, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 48, being original Senate File 34. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 49, being original Senate File 125.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 49, being original Senate File 125. An act relating to gaming, specifying persons involved in horse racing and pari-mutuel wagering activities who shall be subject to criminal background checks, specifying rulemaking requirements for the Wyoming Gaming Commission, providing definitions and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 49, being original Senate File 125. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 50, being original Senate File 47.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 50, being original Senate File 47. An act relating to compensation and benefits, increasing employee and employer contributions for law enforcement officers under the Wyoming Retirement Act, providing a monthly death benefit for officers killed in the line of duty, providing appropriations and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 50, being original Senate File 47. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 51, being original Senate File 24.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 51, being original Senate File 24. an act relating to public utilities, providing for the review of integrated resource plan action plans by the Public Service Commission, providing rulemaking authority, authorizing a position, providing an appropriation, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 51, being original Senate File 24. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 52, being original Senate File 99.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 52, being original Senate File 99, an act relating to public health and safety, prohibiting physicians from performing procedures for children related to gender transitioning and gender reassignment, providing an exception, providing that the gender transitioning and the reassignment procedures are grounds for suspension or revocation of a physician's or healthcare provider's license, providing definitions, specifying applicability, requiring rulemaking, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 52, being original Senate File 99. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 53, being original Senate File 23.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 53, being original Senate File 23, an act relating to public utilities, establishing a solicitation process for specified electrical utilities, acquiring or constructing significant energy resources, providing a waiver process, providing for the use of independent evaluators, providing rulemaking authority, authorizing a full-time position, providing an appropriation, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 53, being original Senate File 23. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 54, being original Senate File 109.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 54, being original Senate File 109, an act relating to the protection of constitutional rights, prohibiting the implementation or enforcement of a red flag gun seizure, preempting local law, providing definitions, providing for a civil action, providing a penalty, waiving sovereign immunity, authorizing attorney's fees, authorizing the Attorney General to initiate a civil action, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 54, being original Senate File 109. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 55, being original Senate File 6.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 55, being original Senate File 6, an act relating to professions and occupations, authorizing the Board of Nursing Home Administrators to issue temporary licenses for nursing home administrators as specified, making conforming amendments, requiring rulemaking, and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 55, being original Senate Enrolled Act Number 55, being original Senate File 6. I have so signed. Messages from the Senate.
Message number 315. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 125, repeal gun-free zones and preemption amendments. Ayes 22, noes 8, excused 1. Message 316, concurrence requested. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 166, Education Savings Account 1. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 20, noes 10, excused 1. Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 317. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 13, Federal Land Use Plans, Legal Actions Authorized. The Senate failed to concur on the House amendments to the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 1, noes 28, conflict 2. Message number 318. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 75, Omnibus Water Bill Construction. The Senate failed to concur on House amendments to the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 0, noes 30, excused 1. Message 319. Mr. Speaker, the Senate appointed Senate conferees to meet with the Light Committee Number 1 from the House on amendments to Senate File 75. The Senate conferees are Senator Garou, Chairman, Senator Driscoll, Senator Steinmetz. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
I got a concurrence, but I don't know if I see, there's Clouston, so that's good. All right. We're at that order of business of request to concur with Senate amendments to House bills. The first message for our consideration is message number 316 on House Bill 166, Chairman Northrup. You need it?
Mr. Speaker,
Go ahead, Chairman Northrup.
I move for concurrence on message number 316 on House Bill 166 and ask you to vote no on concurrence. Basically, I have it here. Thank you. Just a second. So I get to read from my phone. It eliminates pre-K, eliminates income level requirements as a means test, also increases the award to $6,000 per year, takes the statewide assessment out, and eliminates the ability to terminate a student's eligibility if they fail to learn the Constitution. We're asking you to vote no on concurrence. This is House Bill 166.
All right, Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would respectfully encourage an aye vote on concurrence. The changes that the Senate made in many ways made the bill significantly better and comparable to what the ESAs that people enjoy in many other states and have been successful for nearly a decade. Taking out the means testing means that the program is available to everybody, all Wyomingites, as is our other programs that fund education, such as the public schools, the Hathaway, the funding that goes to community colleges and the university. If I said something I wasn't supposed to there, forgive me. But, Mr. Chairman, and I don't see anything too wrong with that it should be available to everybody. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, many school choice programs, including the oldest one and the most universal one, does not have the requirement for a standardized test. This has become the bill that in local state-specific polling, 81% of our constituents support. Please vote aye on concurrence.
Representative Clouston for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fellow House members, this bill that's come back from the other side is no longer the compromise bill that we've worked on for a year. They've stripped out the compromise pre-kindergarten piece. The accountability piece is gone. You know, of all the states that have accountability, there's only 3 states that have ESAs that do not require the accountability testing. Last year it was 4. And when I was at the conference last summer, they said this was the most important piece so students don't fall behind and to fight fraud. The Senate has unfortunately taken that part out. They've also taken out the tiered income system. So whether you're a family struggling to make ends meet or you're a multimillionaire, they all get the same amount. So I'm going to ask you to all vote no. Let's take this back into committee and let's see if we can make this a better bill for Wyoming. Thank you.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask for a no vote as well.
I don't disagree with what the last speaker just said. The main purpose of this is I want this bill. We have worked hard on this bill. This bill has been through the ringer, right? But the biggest portion of what I would like to go to conference on and hammer out, and I really want to hammer this out because I think if we don't, we stand a very good chance that this bill is not going to survive the ink downstairs, right? And that is the constitutionality portion. The Constitution of our state says that we cannot just give money to any individual. That's plain and simple. It's Article 16, Section 6. Except for the necessary support of the poor. That was why we had a stair-step approach in this bill. I want to go to conference and I want to see if we can iron that out. Please vote no. Let's go to conference. We've got a full day to figure this out. We got plenty of time tomorrow. Let's work on it.
Representative Nyman, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Man, I'm really torn on that. I really appreciate the sentiments of the last speaker, but I also have heard this quite a few times in this body. I hope that we don't get to the point where we actually allow what I've been told on even our tax bills, the perfect, to destroy the good or to create an obstacle for the good. Folks, this is our opportunity to put in a structure in place that we can build on. Now, if this goes to conference committee and they bring it back, but I would still encourage you, I don't know what's going to happen with conference committee. That's anybody's guess. But folks, this is a move on our part of our state that is going to offer the opportunity to be able to change how we and what we offer to our kids and our parents. So I would support concurrence on this, but do what you feel right in your heart. But folks, even if it comes back and let's say if it doesn't get changed, please don't let this fall on the ground now. Do not let the perfect be the death of something good here for our state and our kids.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Rodriguez-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the good chairman explaining to the body what exactly the Senate did in concurrence. I really have a lot of respect for that. Furthermore, I encourage an aye vote on concurrence. What a wonderful opportunity for Wyoming families. What a wonderful opportunity for Wyoming parents to choose what's best for their child. This is what the majority of Wyomingites want. This isn't about compromise between bodies. This is about doing what's right for the future generation. I encourage an aye vote.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time? Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't disagree. Let's not let perfect be the enemy of good here. But I'll also say that we have to be constitutional. Otherwise, there's a big rubber stamp downstairs it starts with the letter V and ends with the letter O that I'm really, really worried about. So conference committee is a heck of a lot better than getting down to the point of having that stamp on there.
Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are 13 ESA states that have ESA programs in the United States. And 4 of them don't have the testing requirement. But some of those 4 are the biggest, oldest, and most successful ESA programs in the country. And the biggest one in Arizona has a financial fraud rate of just 0.25%. And that is because they have the same accountability controls in their program that we have put into this bill. Additionally, Article 16, Section 6 was referenced, and I hear it referenced a lot. Neither the state nor any county, city, township, town, school district, or any other political subdivision shall loan or give its credit or make a donation to or in aid of any individual, association, or corporation except for the necessary support of the poor. Well, Mr. Speaker, we're not loaning money to anybody. We're not giving a donation to anybody. Article 1, Section 23 of our Constitution says the right of the citizens for opportunities for education shall have practical recognition, and the legislature shall suitably encourage means and agencies calculated to advance the sciences and liberal arts. Mr. Chairman, we are funding a program available to a broad class of citizens. We are not funding an individual. We are not funding a school. The Supreme Court case, Zellman, said that when in a school choice program, the funds are directed by the parent, that is private action, and the funds become private at that point. If any money goes to any school, that was a private action, and that has been held throughout the much time since then in many other court cases, every time this has gone to the courts. This bill is constitutional, and it is sound policy, and it is what 81% of our constituents in Wyoming are asking for. Thank you.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, as you've heard, the high points are probably unconstitutional, probably should be a Title 42 welfare item instead of being an education, because we're literally giving money to anybody who asks for it. Vote no.
We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 166. A majority of elected members is required. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Allemande? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clouston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Harrelson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Excused? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storr? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanzer Dan? Zwanzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? What do you want to vote? Locke, aye. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 27 aye, 34 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to not concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 166. Conference Committee, Brown, Chair, Clouston, Lawley. Okay, maybe this time we've cleared the deck, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Well, yeah. You know I'm here.
I'll be here too. Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand and adjourn until 8 a.m. tomorrow, the 8th day of March, 2024.
All right, you've heard the motion. Do we have any announcements? Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Select Committee for Capital Finance and Investments was scheduled to meet at 5 p.m. in room 113. I don't know if our Senate counterparts are down there, so we'll go check. If they are, we'll meet at right now, and if they're not down there, we will find a time tomorrow to meet. So just wanted to give everyone a heads up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your Joint Conference Committee for House Bill 1 will meet for 5 minutes upstairs to get assignments for the budget presentation in the morning so you can be ready. Thank you.
All righty. Any other announcements? If not, all those in favor of the majority floor leader's motion say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned until 8 a.m. tomorrow, Friday, March 8th, 2024.